Good morning. So having discussed the different elements of Yom Tov in general, the Simcha on the Chag, the Torah on the Chag, now we want to turn our attention to understanding what exactly is permissible and what exactly is forbidden on Yom Tov, and how Yom Tov, generally all the Yom Tovim are different to Shabbat. So we've established already that there is a greater sense of simcha, of rejoicing and happiness on the Chag, which we don't have on Shabbat. Shabbat, there's something else called oneg, delight, which we've discussed, but it's clear that Yom Tov is greater in its sense of rejoicing over the Chag. However, in terms of holiness, in terms of Kedusha is clearly Shabbat is the holiest of all our days in the calendar. So, in a sense, from a perspective of Kedusha, which the prohibition of Melacha is derived from, Shabbat is clear, it's the most severe, which is why the Torah says, Kol Melacha lo ya'aseh. Any Melacha cannot be done on Shabbat. Whereas, when the Torah in various places discusses Yom Tov and prohibits work on Yom Tov, gives the caveat that Ach asher ye'achel lechol nefesh, anything which is for food purposes, that is excluded and that is permissible to be done on Yom Tov. Similarly, when the Torah in Parashat Emor talks about the Chagim, it says Melechet Avodah, Melacha of Avodah, of work. Whereas when it talks about on Shabbat, Melacha, it just says Kol Melacha, all work. On Yom Tov, there is a caveat that not all melachot which are forbidden on Shabbat are forbidden on Yom Tov, and the caveat is ach asher ye'achel lechol nefesh, anything which is done for ochel nefesh, for food. So, for example, common examples which we know: a person's allowed to bake, allowed to cook, allowed to for food is allowed to increase the heat increase the fire so that there's greater temperature for the food to cook, can take out foods, and so on. But not all melachot are permissible. We have to understand why and what, and from the Hachamim and from the Torah. Generally speaking, again, we're going to go into the details, but generally speaking, something which is done on an industrial scale, on a large scale, is prohibited. Or something which is done commonly with employees, with workers, that's also prohibited. But again, there are details to this, and B'ezras Hashem, we will go through them. What comes out really is the three main categories. There are some things which are completely permissible to be done on Yom Tov. There are some things which are completely forbidden to do on Yom Tov. And then there is a middle category which is permissible in certain circumstances if it's done on a small scale, not on a large industrial scale, and there are rabbinic elements to that as well. Now, although the Torah says anything for food purposes, so you can bake and you can cook and you can take out foods, the Gemara importantly establishes the concept of mitoch. Mitoch means because of. That means when the Torah said that anything which is for food is allowed to be done on Yom Tov, it didn't allow it only if you're doing it for food purposes. Mitoch shehutra letzorech ochel nefesh, because it's permissible for food purposes, it's even permissible not for food purposes. And this is why we're allowed to carry on Yom Tov even nothing got to do with food. So I'm allowed to carry my talit to synagogue, even in a place where there's no eruv. I'm allowed to light a fire to give me light or to give me heat, even though it's not necessarily for food purposes. You're allowed to heat up water to wash dishes, even though that's not necessarily strictly for food purposes. But this is the Gemara established, this is accepted by all, that mitoch, because it's permissible for ochel nefesh, it's permissible also for not ochel nefesh, for not food purposes. And the final point of introduction to all of this is that whenever something is permissible, either category 1, which we said earlier, which is completely permissible, or category 2, which is permissible on a low scale, it always has to be done letzorech the Chag. It has to be done for the purpose of the festival. If a person begins to cook food late in the afternoon, where it's not possible for that food to be cooked on the Chag, then one, according to all opinions, violates a prohibition from the Torah of doing Melacha on the Chag, even though he's cooking. But since it's not possible for that food to be ready before the end of Chag, it's prohibited to do so from the Torah. If a person does cook late afternoon for the intention of doing it for the next day, but there is the possibility that someone will come and someone may eat the food, then that's asur from the Hachamim. It's still prohibited, but since there's the possibility of it being consumed on the Yom Tov, even though one's intention was for after Yom Tov, it's not forbidden from the Torah, but it's still forbidden from the Hachamim. So to conclude, what we've said is that there is a sharp distinction between Shabbat and Yom Tov in terms of ochel nefesh. Once something is permissible because of ochel nefesh, it becomes permissible completely in all circumstances, even if it's not necessarily for food. But not all melachot are permissible, and not all melachot are forbidden. And even when it is permissible, it has to be done with the intention of it being the benefit of the melacha being derived on Yom Tov itself. So, B'ezras Hashem, next week we'll resume with this and go through the details of the different melachot.